Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. I hope everyone can hear me all right. If you can't, please let me know. I will adjust my system. We've got a lot to talk about. But before we get started, I want to thank you and welcome you to the show. We do every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We go live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive, everywhere the social media internet overlords will allow, to reach out to hear your voices about the issues that are affecting us today. We believe in the First Amendment. We want to hear your right, your ability to speak about the issues from anywhere in the world, and we thank you for joining us at this moment. And you can reach us not just on the social media, but you can also call into the show at 607-242-1582. The phone is live and ready for your calls to tell us what you think about the issues that are affecting us all today. And I'm just checking my phone. So we want to talk about what's going on with China, what's going on with Taiwan, what's going on with Iraq. We want to talk about the protest that happened in downtown Binghamton yesterday and the attack against protesters that occurred that the rest of the news media will not cover. We want to talk to you about what's happening in our world, and it's getting troubling. It's really getting scary at this point. And I want to hear what you have to say about that. Please, I want to hear your voices because it's very, very important. Let me go to something that just came out. It was just breaking in the news about on Twitter. If you were just looking at it just before the show started, the question is, oh my God, there's going to be a second civil war. This is the big thing on Twitter right now. A civil war is coming. It popped up. It's trending right now. And I have to say, where have you been? What Twitter's saying this as if this is a brand new thing, like this is some new thought, like no one has ever thought that there is a problem in America right now and that people are thinking that there's a second civil war coming. This isn't new. This is old news. I mean, yes, you can see it. It was yesterday, it was reported on October 9th from MSNBC that one of their reporters talking to individuals at a rally said, oh my God, they see the potential of a second civil war coming, that our nation is being divided and split apart. So this is the big news coming out of Twitter. This is the big news coming out of MSNBC, as reported by Mediatite, which is a left-leaning source. And they're saying, oh, well, the country believes we're on the wrong track. And this is because of Trump. Really? You're kidding, right? Because I covered this back on, it was the July 21st, 11 weeks ago. We were talking about this, and I would love to show you this video. And I wish I could, except when we put it out, YouTube removed it. They removed it and they struck us for a week and we couldn't speak for an entire week. And so the video does exist on Rumble. And if I play it, well, our channel will get shut down again. And we were talking about the division in this nation and how it's affecting us. But it's not new news. Back in July 7th of 2018, we were talking about the problems that were coming on, the potential of a second civil war coming in America, the division that we see happening, and what was causing that division. This is old news. This is a problem that's been coming for some time. Our nation is getting separated more and more. And my good friend Larry Sharp had brought up the fact that there's more going on in this world than just COVID, the pandemic. One of the problems is that we are being divided as a nation. We are being separated, and the news media is helping it, and we're seeing the pandemic being used as a tool to further divide people. That's why there was an attack on Saturday against people peacefully protesting. And I'm not talking about the peaceful protests coming out of BLM where you have an arson going on in the background. I'm not talking about the peaceful protests that we saw throughout 2020 where cities were being burned to the ground and people were being killed. I'm talking about an actual peaceful protest. People walking and speaking about what they believe, standing up for their rights. In this case, healthcare workers, which is a big deal. because New York State lost 30,000 healthcare workers. We see that doctors and hospitals are being affected. Nursing homes are being affected, that people have less quality care. Surgeries are being put off. People are waiting longer in emergency rooms because of a decision by appointed Governor Kathy Hochul. She made a decision that no one had anything to say about, and it's affecting all of us. And because of that, someone decided that they wanted to attack people for saying we don't agree with this impact on our lives, on our community. That's kind of devastating. That's kind of terrifying. And I don't know what's causing that. And I know a lot of people would prefer, well, we want to watch football right now. We're going to watch football instead. We're going to talk about what's going on with football. And I get it, but you know, this is a problem that's happening right now, and it's a big deal. But it's not the only big deal, because there's a lot going on in the world right now. We are getting closer to not just a civil war in the United States. We're getting closer to problems internationally as well. China is moving forward, and they are getting more and more aggressive, especially with Taiwan. And that's starting to push us towards the potential of an outright fighting war with China. You're not hearing a lot of that in the news. It's being downplayed. It's a big deal. And we need to address that. Hang on. Give me a second. I'm just updating one of the streams here. And so this is very important. And we want to make sure that you're aware of all of this. And we want to hear your thoughts, because this is going to affect people all around the world. But let me take a step back. Let me talk about something that you probably didn't hear a lot of news about over this week. Because we saw another school shooting, which is always a bad thing. It's always a negative. And we keep being told that, well, these are things that are being done because they're white people. That's the latest blame on this. The root cause is white people. It goes along with the critical race theory idea that everyone who's white is a racist, and everyone who's black or Hispanic or a minority, well, they're just victims. Which doesn't play well when we see that in Arlington, Texas, there is a young black man who decided that because of whatever his reason, he decided to attack and try and kill other students and teachers in his school. Now, he got a $75,000 bail, which seems insane to me. But the big thing that you may have heard about that story, here's the thing you didn't probably hear, because almost no one on the left was covering this. The kid's got a GoFundMe. They are raising money for this kid right now for his legal fund because he was bullied. That's what we're told. He was being bullied, although video evidence shows that he was bullying others, and he's got a GoFundMe account. There are people who are saying, well, poor black kid. This poor black kid had no choice. He was being bullied and traumatized, and so he has to go out and shoot up a school. Are we kidding? Did you hear about this, folks? And hang on. There we go. I want to hear about this, folks. Did you hear this? I see some of the comments now. Jason, thank you for joining us. Jason said, they made him out to be a victim. Jordan mentions GoFundMe pulled the account. I didn't see that GoFundMe pulled the account. The point is that they did it in the first place, that it happened, that someone looked at this kid and said, well, it's okay that he shot up a school because he's black. And we're going to blame it on the trauma of him being in the racist institution known as our education system. That's a problem. That's critical race theory. These are the consequences of critical race theory. That you can excuse attempted murder, because that's what it was, attempted murder, and you can excuse that because of the color of your skin. And that it's the only way. This is literally by even doing this, by even making this account, they are justifying attempted murder They are justifying school shootings. They're justifying of black people attacking white people and others. Now, you may disagree with me. You may say, Mike, well, no, I don't see it that way. Okay, you don't have to. You don't have to agree with me. You can tell me, Mike, I think that's entirely wrong. But think about it for a second. Why else would there ever be the people on the news, and this was on national news, while the account and the fact that he was trying to raise money on GoFundMe wasn't, the parents defending this kid, the news media, and so many activist groups defending this child for actually going out and trying to kill other people. Now, we have said for a long time, we've been covering this for well over a decade, mass shootings and school shootings, and we have said the real problem is the root cause. What is the thing that makes someone decide the only choice they have in life is to go out and shoot innocent people? If we can answer that question, which is a very difficult question, if we can answer that, we can end mass shootings and school shootings. And it's a very difficult question because it's not as simple as, well, it's about racism or it's about income inequality or any of the silly reasons I've seen out there. There's like 38 different reasons, according to 538.com, which did this, a left-leaning site that looked into all the mass shootings that have happened. And there really aren't that many. But when you look at it, there are many different factors that are in there. One of the things being, having a full family unit, good education, speaking out about what's going on in your life. There's a lot of reasons. Jason mentions mass shootings can only be done by a white fascist man or narratives don't fit. Well, that's the thing. We see so many excuses and so many reasons why people make this so political in the wrong way. They're so focused on, oh, well, it has to fit this storyline. You know why you didn't hear? Think about it. Every mass shooting you've heard about over the last 10 years have been magnified in the news. It's been national news for 3 days, maybe a week at a time, that the news media can't talk about anything else except when someone happens to not fit the narrative of being a crazy white male. When they're not some crazed racist white male, the story disappears within 24 hours. You don't hear about this. You don't know this kid's name. I guarantee you, you don't know this kid's name and you don't know what school he was in. Because the story was killed almost immediately. Why? He's black. It doesn't fit the narrative. You can't say, well, he's just a crazy MAGA kid. He's some crazy racist white guy. You can't say that. Well, that doesn't change the fact that this kid made the decision that his only choice was to go out and shoot people. There is a problem. There is a fundamental problem when anyone makes that decision. And we need to understand, why did anyone come to that decision? I don't care about their color of skin. I don't care about their economics. I don't care about their political background. We need to understand that. And if we understand that, we can fix it. Jason mentions, then Chicago DA is letting gang shooters go free. I know, and that's part of the problem. It's not just in Chicago or Baltimore or down in Detroit, which are obviously examples of where we've seen the failure of the gun control or gun restriction legislation that has been put out around this nation. It has failed. For decades, it has failed. And now the new thing is, well, let's defund the police and let's release the criminals. This is stupid. And what is it? In San Francisco, they're paying criminals and potential criminals, whatever that's supposed to mean, $600 not to go out and shoot people and commit crimes. That is a fact. That's actually actively happening right now. It is a pilot program in California, in San Francisco. They are paying criminals, maybe LA. They're paying criminals $600 a month not to go out and shoot people and commit crimes. This is where we have come to. This is stupid. I don't say that often, but really, we're paying potential criminals whatever that's supposed to be defined as, to $600 a month not to commit a crime. Isn't that extortion? What is that? And we're doing that because we're trying to defund the police, which is also stupid, and we're trying to disarm the public, which is also a dumb idea, in violation of the Second Amendment. I was having a conversation with someone on Facebook just yesterday about this, and they're telling me, well, the reason why gun control doesn't work in Chicago, Baltimore, Detroit, across the nation, in New York State, why it has completely failed every time, even though it is the only solution that is being offered by Democrats, it is the only solution that is being offered by politicians at this time. They're saying, well, the reason why it doesn't work and why it has never worked is because it's not national. We need to nationally restrict people. We need to remove the Second Amendment. That was the answer I got off of Facebook. It's terrifying to me. That's your answer, is to say, okay, the only way that we can stop some crazy kid, and I will tell you right now, this kid is crazy. When you decide that the only answer is you need to go out and shoot up innocent civilians, you are crazy. That kid, that crazy kid, the answer to him is to take away all the guns from everybody in the nation. Because, you know what? There's no guns that are in the rest of the world. It's not like Mexico doesn't import into the United States illegal guns. It's not like China isn't selling guns around the world. France, England, every country selling guns. You mean to tell me that if we stop all legal gun ownership, that suddenly the 350 million guns in the United States, they're suddenly going to disappear? And that no one could ever get another gun or another bullet from anywhere else in the world in the United States? Because criminals will suddenly go, there's no more guns in the United States. I guess I got to give up crime. I mean, this is the logic that we're hearing. You guys can tell me, does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to anyone? And you can tell me, Mike, I think you're completely wrong. You see Jason is making his comments. You can also make your comments, or you can call into the show at 607-242-1582. Tell me, does any of that make sense to you? Jason did mention that what else are they going to be subsidizing? Speaking about the subsidizing crime in California, he goes on to say that his mental health is a result of white supremacy, so they say. You know what? That's stupid. The kid may have been traumatized. I don't know. He may have been bullied, or he may have been the bully. I don't know. There's data there's information, there's video that shows both of these things. Let me tell you this. His mental health is his mental health. He lost somewhere in there. He failed to make the connection that human beings are killing human beings is a bad thing. That's horrible. That is something that is rejected by every religion, by every society on the face of the earth, and that it doesn't resolve anything. Is it because of culture? Is it because of teachings? I don't know. But I can tell you this. Trying to excuse it on the basis of race, trying to excuse it because the kid's, it's not his fault. Yes, it is. He took the gun. He pulled the trigger. Yes, it's his fault. I don't care if he's black. I don't care if he's white or Asian. I don't care whether he's rich or poor. This kid made a decision, and he needs to be held accountable for it, and we should not hear the news media excusing it. And the fact that he is separating this nation. And you can tell me, Mike, well, you just don't understand. Okay, how don't I understand? You can tell me, oh, well, the fault is, it's not his fault because he used a gun, and we just need to get rid of guns. Well, that doesn't explain, how about the kids in upstate New York 2 years ago that built a bunch of bombs that they were going to take to Islamburg in New York State, a Muslim enclave in upstate New York. They were going to bomb them. They didn't have guns. So What's the difference? And we've seen that in many of these things, Columbine and so forth. The crime isn't the firearm. The crime is the action, and we need to identify that, and maybe we get a little bit closer to getting to the real root cause. I mean, or am I crazy? Am I just not understanding this? Is it not making sense? I want to hear what you think. And Jason mentions that they don't want personal responsibility. They want it to be the government's fault and the government's responsibility. It's never the government's responsibility. An individual made a choice. And that individual made a choice to kill other human beings, whether he used a car, a bomb, a knife, a sword, or a firearm. It doesn't make a difference. He made a choice. We need to hold him accountable to that choice, not to excuse it. Not to excuse it because of his race, his youth, his anything. And we need to say this is wrong in our society and punish him accordingly because he made that choice. I mean, that's where I stand on this. Maybe you say, Mike, you just don't get it. Okay, tell me why. Dow mentions we're all crazy for letting our vigilance lax. And I agree. Dow, I completely agree that this is one of the problems. And because of this, the way that we're looking at this, the way that we are excusing, because this is something that's unique. We don't excuse all the other school shootings, the Virginia school shootings, anywhere else in the nation. We don't excuse that. And we don't say, well, it's not so bad because he's black, because he's young, because he's poor. We don't say that about any other mass shooting. You've never heard that from the news media about any mass shooting. No one ever said the Las Vegas shooter, well, he wasn't necessarily rich and, maybe he had a bad background. No, who cares? And we need to take that attitude with all of these people and really look at what is causing them to make this choice and to stop them and to punish them for these kinds of mass shootings. I even saw comparisons of this kid whose name is Timothy Simpkins, and they compared him to the Kenosha kid, which now his name just ran out of my head, and the shooting in Kenosha, which was self-defense. There's a big difference between self-defense and someone just going out randomly shooting people. It's insane. And this is part of the problem. And this is why we have, as I will discuss a little bit later in the show, why peaceful protesters in downtown Binghamton, New York, were attacked by a young man, probably the same age as this kid, attacked by what we believe may be a student at one of the colleges in the region. He just comes out and attacks. He attacks people, not because, who knows why? Because maybe they were carrying an American flag, maybe because there were people of color in the crowd, maybe because they were saying that they believed in body autonomy. I don't know. He didn't say. All he did was decide he wanted to make an attack on a group of human beings without any reason. And I don't see any separation between that attack that happened in Binghamton yesterday and this kid in Arlington, Texas. They're the same thing. Someone lashing out with violence for no reason whatsoever, making the choice that these human lives don't count as much. And my belief is it's because of politics. It's because they're being taught in schools, well, people that don't agree with you are evil, they're less than human, and therefore you can do anything you want to them. Dow mentions, it's incredible to me how averse the criminal courts, police, and DAs to actually doing their job and bringing justice for victims while simultaneously prosecuting criminals, not citizens. Well, think about who you have in the DA's office. Remember, last week we were talking about Rachel Rollins, a individual who's being put into, trying to be put by the Biden administration into a federal office, and her belief is that if you are black, you can't make a crime, that you can break into someone's house, and it's perfectly okay. That she doesn't believe in breaking and entering, stealing property, trespassing. She didn't agree with any. Rachel Rollins, that's her name. She doesn't think any of those things are crimes. When you tell people that, that's a problem. And by the way, Dal, thank you for mentioning it's Kyle Rittenhouse. I just couldn't think of that for a second. Yeah. Jason mentions, rules for radicals handbook. There's a problem in our nation. And it's reaching levels that are insane. No wonder we see on Twitter that they're talking about a second civil war. Something they want to say, well, that's because of Trump. No, it's not. It's because you're letting kids off the hook for committing absolute crimes, and the crime I will get to, the crimes of violence that we're seeing in our nation, because they're being taught it's okay. And as long as you're the right racial or political outlook, you can get away with it. That's why they're paying people to not commit crimes. Why they're changing the rules. We have the bail reform that let criminals right back out. And in New York State, 14% of those individuals went out and committed even more crimes, felonies, on a repeated basis. And you might wonder, well, why is this? How is this happening? What's the impact of this? I'll tell you what the impact is. These crazy rules that are coming from the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration, as they like to be quoted, we're looking at the economy. It's failing. We had 194,000 jobs created in September. 194,000. The estimate was a minimum of 500,000. That was the expectation. We came in at 194,000, less than half. That's like 60% miss. That is an intense, incredible failure, and the stock market reacted to that. It's a problem. It means we are in trouble in our nation. Now, we have so many people who aren't getting jobs. And when people aren't getting jobs, when they're not working, what are they doing? Because at the same time that we're seeing this, we have an increase in the amount of opioid overdoses that are going on. We have a massive surge in drug use in our nation. We have a massive increase in crime across this nation, especially in cities that have decided to defund the police. Do these things not connect? I mean, if you think I'm wrong, if this doesn't make sense to you, that these things are connected, okay, tell me why. Let's have that conversation. And by the way, this is important for the rest of the world because we are exporting these ideas to the rest of the world. We're doing it in movies and TV shows and our news programs that are going out around the world. And we're having people go out from the United States to teach people in France, in England, in Australia, and telling them, well, we need to expand the BLM movement. We need to expand the critical race theory. The rest of the world has to apologize for existing because of the color of their skin. They are the problem intrinsically. And people around the world are saying, oh, I'll buy into that because it means free stuff for me. Maybe in England, they're going to start paying criminals or people who could be potential criminals. They're going to start paying them for not committing crime. In France, well, maybe it's the BLM movement. Well, maybe I should get someone's house for free. Or maybe they'll do like Rachel Rollins and they won't arrest me for breaking and entering and stealing stuff. You can see why this is attractive to people in other countries, the criminal elements in other countries, why they're going all for this and they want to promote this. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Dow mentions already seeing a soft divorce based on vaccinated and unvaccinated. Policymakers pushing this divisiveness latched onto the fear of infection because of stiff pushback on the race revolution of critical race theory. We're seeing a big division. We've been seeing this division amongst people for a long time, where politics is important, where people are judging other people based on their politics and saying, oh, you're the wrong political view. You must be evil. Just ask libertarians about that. Just ask a lot of Republicans about that. Even Democrats. You talk to Democrats versus progressives, and you'll hear that. Oh, you're not nearly the right political point of view. You're evil. And that's why we're hearing people talk about a second civil war. It's not because there's people at a Trump rally. It's not because of MAGA, Make America Great. It's not even because of Build Back Better, which is just another way of saying Make America Great. No. This is based in politics dividing our nation. And it is expanding around the world, and it's having an impact on our jobs. It's having an impact on our economy, which is creating even further division. These are problems, and we're not seeing them being addressed. And they are giving rise to actions of violence. Again, as I said, I'm going to get to it, to what happened in Binghamton yesterday, the attack that I was luckily able to capture on video, and that there are charges that are going to be going out. Their charges are pending right now, and the suspect is available, and I'll show you the video of it. But I want you to understand, this is where it's coming from. How do we get to someone attacking peaceful protesters for no reason, just walks on out into the middle of the street and attacks someone? Because of these things. Dow mentions this pitting one against the other is unsustainable, like any Marxist ideology. Critical race theory, the pandemic medicated against those who are not. Politics must have a violent revolution to purify thought, culture, and political discourse. Well, that's the terrifying thing. We see that our colleges, our schools are trying to get purity of thought, a singular message and mental state coming out of our students. And that mental state is derogatory. It's deficient. It hurts our communities. It leads to violence. It's a mental state of mind that says that if you aren't thinking the right way, you're not human, and therefore I can commit violence against you. That is what I come to the reasoning of in watching this happen across the nation. Mike Bowies mentions communists are evil. Well, that I would agree with, absolutely. Just as I would say that about fascists. They're evil, and communists are fascists. Jason mentions that this is dehumanization. I agree. It is dehumanization. And it's being taught in our schools, and it's affecting our youth, and it is being spread by the major media, which is why they won't show certain news topics, why they have been editing for very, very massively editing news and content for the last 2 years at a rate and a pace never seen before on a wide range of topics. That's why you see Facebook is in trouble. Why? They're targeting 13-year-old children, and they're targeting them with content that is making those young children want to kill themselves. That's a fact. That was covered in Congress. They had a congressional debate about this. There are whistleblowers who have provided information that says that on Instagram, Google and Facebook are well aware that their content is toxic. It is causing young girls and boys to consider committing suicide because they are pushing their programs in such a negative way. Their content is so toxic that this is the reaction, and they're not stopping. And you're not hearing the rest of the news media talk about this. They don't want to discuss this because Twitter is maybe half a step different than what we're seeing on Instagram, on what's happening on Facebook, what's happening on YouTube. And as much as they want to say, well, we're protecting you. No, you're not. They're not letting other voices out there. They're not letting people have an outlet to be able to speak like we're trying to do on this channel. No, they restrict that. They shadow ban, they suppress it. They don't want people to have a conversation and to maybe find a mutual common ground and say, well, let's work from here. Let's improve things from this basis. No, what they want is more division because that feeds in. It's like the news media. You don't hear good news on the news media. What, you'll hear one good news story and an entire hour of bad news stories because that sells. Violence sells. Sex sells. We know this. And the news media feeds off of that. And they don't want to talk about anything that connects people because that's not good news. They lose eyeballs on that. Instead, they want to focus on, well, this is how people are being torn apart. And by the way, if you don't agree, if you speak out against it, you are going to be depersoned. You're going to be punished because you are the problem. This is their circular logic. If you don't agree, you must be evil. If you don't agree that you don't have the right to choose what's going to happen to your own body, well, then you're an evil person. We heard that from Arnold Schwarzenegger, from George Takei. We've heard that from Joe Biden. And we've heard it in our schools, being taught to our kids. You don't have that right. You don't have that freedom. Your freedom doesn't count. It doesn't matter. It doesn't exist. Because you're not a human being. Because if you were a human being, you would agree with us. You would do what we say. Therefore, we can take away your freedoms. We can take away your rights. Maybe you think I'm wrong on that. Maybe you think that doesn't make sense. I'd like to hear why you think that. Because when I look at it objectively, this is what we see. This is the message that's being put out there. And that message is being put out there to cover up other information that you absolutely want to know about. Let me show you what I mean. Do you remember this from September? It's about a month ago. Senator Rand Paul speaking on the floor of the Senate, asking Secretary Antony Blinken about the Americans who are abandoned in Afghanistan. They remain abandoned in Afghanistan at this moment. And he had a question about the United States negotiating with terrorists, the Taliban in particular. And this is what he had to say at the time.
The $64 million, though, is the tip of the iceberg. There's still about $10 billion out there that was designated for the Afghan government. Can you pledge today, without equivocation, that the Biden administration will not release any of this money to the Taliban?
Absent the Taliban making good on the commitments and expectations of the international community that I've outlined previously, that's correct.
Okay. Did you hear what he just said? Let me make sure we understand. So while everyone has been talking about COVID, and they're talking about, you're evil for not doing what COVID says. You're evil for not understanding critical race theory. That you are inherently a racist if you're white, and you are inherently a victim if you're a minority. Those messages are taking away from news about this, that there is $10 billion, your money, $10 billion out of your pocket that is going to be given by the Biden-Harris administration to the Taliban, a international terrorist organization that is supporting ISIS, another international terrorist organization, and Al-Qaeda, yet another international terrorist organization. We're going to give them $10 billion if they let girls go to school. That's all they need to do. They let girls go to school, and supposedly any American in Afghanistan gets to leave. If they do those two things, they get $10 billion. Are you kidding me? How is that not negotiating with terrorism? Something that we have heard expressly from every president up until now that has said, we will not do that. We will not negotiate with terrorists. We will not fund terrorism, something that was actually done under the Obama administration, as then Secretary of State John Kerry said publicly, that the United States, in making the Iran nuclear deal, funded global terrorism. And when we did that, global terrorism around the world increased because Iran took the money from the United States and increased the amount of global terror in the world. And here we are doing the same thing. We're telling terrorists, the Taliban, that all they have to do is look like they have made a change. That's all they have to do. They just have to look like they're doing something positive, and we will give them $10 billion of your money. Meanwhile, that money is going to go to fund global terror, which is going to make things worse, not just for the United States and any American overseas, but our allies in Israel, in the United Kingdom, in France, in Germany, in Australia, in Canada, everywhere, all of our NATO allies. You think I'm kidding? You think, Mike, well, that's just not making sense. Okay, let's check it out.
You could say these talks reward the Taliban for the violent overthrow of an elected government. Does the US address that head on, even behind the scenes?
Well, the US has been saying that this is not giving recognition to the Taliban government or giving them legitimacy. They say it's a pragmatic thing to do to continue engagement with the side. There is going to also expected to be also discussion about the delivery of humanitarian aid to Afghanistan and how can that be done if it doesn't go through the Taliban. Is there any other way of getting aid, much needed aid, to millions of people in the country who don't know where their next meal will come from? But there will be people around the world, and especially women in Afghanistan, who will be wondering why the Taliban's commitments on women's rights, on allowing girls to go to school, on allowing women to continue their jobs, all of the things that they had talked about when they were negotiating that agreement in Doha in February 2020, that when that has not been delivered yet, why does the international community continue engaging with them? And Afghan...
See, and that's the question. Why are we continuing to engage with them? And you may be wondering, well, Mike, who are these people talking about this? This is from the BBC News. This is BBC News talking about this. This is the international community. This is the rest of the world saying, hey, what's going on? It doesn't make any sense. There's a problem here. That we are talking with the Taliban about giving them $10 billion on top of releasing international funds to all these organizations to help people, to feed people. And we know that the Taliban's going to take that money. And the Taliban hasn't done anything that we have required of them, saying, we won't give you any help, we won't give you any aid, we won't do anything unless you're taking care of women, and you're letting girls go to school, you're letting women have jobs. They're not doing any of that. And meanwhile, we see Anthony Blinken, Secretary Blinken, under the Biden-Harris administration, is out there talking with them right now. They're not even helping us get the Americans that are in Afghanistan out of Afghanistan. And we know this for a fact. We know. We've heard Secretary Lloyd Austin, who has told us that there are problems, that the Afghan people, that the Taliban, ISIS, are making it difficult. They're looking to harm Americans who were abandoned in Afghanistan. There could be thousands of them, not 100, thousands of them still in Afghanistan. And we're in the middle of talking about telling the Taliban we're going to give them $10 billion, and they're not doing anything to help us get our people back, let alone letting women have rights like the right to learn how to read, how to drive a car, or to go to a job. They're not doing anything. And meanwhile, the Biden-Harris administration saying, let's give you $10 billion of tax money that the United States doesn't have. We are in a $30 trillion deficit, well, nearly $30 trillion deficit. We're in a massive deficit at this moment, and we're talking about giving them $10 billion to people who have sworn to kill us. And the BBC recognizes this doesn't make any sense. You just heard the BBC talking about it. Mike Bowie says, they raise our taxes to pay the people trying to kill us. That is exactly what we're talking about. The taxes that are in the American Families Plan being promoted by the Biden-Harris administration, that is rejected at this moment by Democrats in both the House and the Senate. It can't pass because they know Americans hate this idea, because it's about taxing and spending, and the spending is going to places like Pakistan to teach them about gender studies, whatever that means, and to go to the Taliban. This is crazy. We already gave the Taliban an entire nation, Afghanistan. We gave them a military. They now have an army. They now have an air force because of what the Biden-Harris administration did, and with the help of generals like General Milley. And now we're talking about we want to give them even more money. This is insane, folks. And this is happening while the news media keeps you focused on be afraid, maybe you should be locked down again because of the pandemic. And oh my God, if you don't have the pandemic medication that's been mandated to you, stripping away all of your rights and freedoms, your individual choices, the government is micromanaging your life while they're busy telling you how they want to micromanage your life. Around the world, they're doing stupid things like, let's fund global terror. Dow mentions, I'm fairly certain the Taliban was very happy with the payment of $85 billion in equipment, money, and material that receiving anything else they demand just cements in their mind the United States' weakness. Yes, that's true. That is a fact. They do think the United States weak. China thinks the United States weak. Russia thinks the United States weak. There isn't a country in the world at this moment that don't think Joe Biden is weak, that Kamala Harris is weak, that they are failing the public, that they have completely failed the public. And you know why? Let me show you why they think that. Because again, not on the main news. This is something that's not national. They don't want to talk about it. They want you to be afraid of going outside your door. That's why they keep talking about the pandemic. But meanwhile, according to October 8th from Oklahoma's Channel 9 News, the U.S. Border Patrol addresses a surge of migrants at the border. 60,000 Haitian migrants. Let's call them what they are. 60,000 illegal aliens are on their way. They've just left Peru, and they're on their way to the United States in the middle of what's going to be winter when they arrive here, and they're coming to our southern border. And remember, this is the same southern border that overwhelmed Secretary Mayorkas, that overwhelmed the Democratic Party. They didn't know what to do. The only solution they had for the 15,000 Haitians that were living under a bridge in Del Rio, Texas, the only thing they had was keep away all the news. Don't allow drones to be able to take pictures of the crowds. They took the people, 12,000 of them, and spread them across the United States. That is a fact. Secretary Mayorkas said this in front of Congress, on the floor of Congress, as he gave his testimony. They took 12,000 of 15,000, possibly 17,000 Haitian immigrants, and they spread them throughout the United States so that everyone couldn't look at the one spot under a bridge and say, this is a problem. Yes, America is great. Yes, America is great because those Haitians made it very clear. It is better to live under a bridge in America than it is to live in Haiti or Brazil or South America. That is, if you're wondering if America is great or not, I cannot give you a better example than 17,000 Haitian immigrants living under a bridge in America rather than going back to their own country or living in Brazil or in Peru, Panama, Costa Rica, Mexico. They didn't want to live in any of those places. They'd rather live under a bridge in America. And no wonder, because 12,000 of them got sent to all the cities across the United States. Not news, not national news. Nope, we don't want to talk about that. And the fact that there's 60,000 more that are coming. I want to show you this. 60,000. This is coming from Oklahoma's news, Tulsa, Oklahoma. 60,000 more people are about to come. They just left Peru. And we have no idea what to do. That's why you're not hearing it in the news. That's why this isn't a national story. We have no idea what to do. We couldn't figure out, our nation under the Biden-Harris administration couldn't figure out what to do with 15,000 Haitians living under a bridge. We got 60,000 on the way. And by the way, that's just the Haitians. That's not including the people who are still evacuating Venezuela, begging to get out of that socialist nation that has completely fallen apart, where they're eating garbage out of dumpsters, and the government, the Venezuelan government, is killing its own people. Remember, those migrants are coming to America too, as well as everyone else from around the world. They know our southern border at the moment is wide open. Everyone, virtually everyone, is being allowed to enter the nation. Almost everyone gets in. Almost every single person who comes to that southern border under the Biden-Harris administration is being left to walk right into our nation. And we don't know who any of them are. And they're coming from around the world. Yes, we're talking about Haitians right now. And yes, we've been talking about the South Americans like the Venezuelans. But guess what? There are people who are coming from every country around the world doing the same exact thing, mixed in with these groups, walking into our nation. And the Biden-Harris administration saying, oh, hey, great, good to see you. Come on in. Let's give you some more of our health care, even though our health care system is already burdened. We don't have enough doctors and nurses and healthcare workers as is, but let's add more to that burden. Come on in. Oh, go to our state like New York State, which is in debt. Yes, appointed Governor Kathy Hochul has not resolved the massive debt of New York State. We are $8 billion in debt this year alone. And she has no answer for this. And she's saying, come on in. Let's take in more of these illegal aliens that broke our laws. And we are teaching these illegal aliens like we're teaching our kids, well, white people are racist and you're a victim. And we have to give everything to the victims. We'd have to just give them stuff. And if you happen to be a criminal, we're going to pay you. Like in California, they're going to pay you to not commit crimes. Are we teaching these illegal aliens anything about how to follow the law? They broke the law. We rewarded them by letting them into our country, giving them health care, giving them places to live. And we're showing them that, by the way, we also pick and choose which laws we're going to enforce. We let people get away with crimes like attempted murder, and we give them excuses like we did for the kid in Austin, Texas. And in some states, we'll even pay you to not commit crimes. Do you think that this is a bad message to be sending out to the rest of the world? The rest of the world that are reacting to this? Even as we're going and the rest of the world is watching us as we are negotiating with terrorists and looking to pay terrorists billions of dollars of tax dollars we don't have, which is going to destabilize the Middle East. Do you see the problem? Gee, I wonder why civil war is circulating on Twitter right now. Because none of this, did you notice, nothing I mentioned has anything to do with any former president. This is about the policies currently in America being pushed forward by progressives and the Biden-Harris administration. Mike Bowie mentions this is an organized migration invasion. And as to Dow, yes, your comment about 60,000 migrants coming, illegal aliens coming to America, it was, as far as I can tell, it has been censored by YouTube because I don't see that comment. So, folks, and I mean, you may ask yourself, well, Mike, you got to remember, this is something that they are working on. You're being unfair. The Biden-Harris administration are on top of this. They are trying to come up with a solution. And I will say to you, really? Then you mean like with Kamala Harris, who in February was assigned the role of taking care. She's supposed to be our border czar. She is the person who's supposed to be on top of what's happening in our southern border. She's supposed to be fixing the problem. Remember, she took a trip to a couple of countries in South America to deal with the root cause of what's happening. She wants us to pay, I think it wasn't Panama, it was El Salvador. She wants the United States to pay El Salvador to keep people in El Salvador, just like the plan in California, where she's from, where they're paying criminals to not commit crime. Well, we want to pay El Salvador so people won't be migrants coming into the United States. A failed policy because it didn't work. But what's she doing? She's in New Jersey eating cupcakes. Meanwhile, there is a meeting about the southern border that's happening with Mexico, and she skips it. This is what's happening. This is why I say the Biden-Harris administration has completely failed and is absolutely weak, and the world knows it. We're talking about, we just had 15,000 migrants, illegal aliens, at our border, living under a bridge in Del Rio, Texas. That is a problem. We didn't know how to even deal with that crowd. It was so many people. We've had over 1.3 million illegal aliens enter our nation that we know of. We have a flood of drugs that are coming into America at this moment. Pounds upon pounds of fentanyl have been found in these crossings, in these illegal aliens, bringing it across our border. And Kamala Harris, who is in charge of taking care of our southern border, of not letting just everybody enter, she's out trying cupcakes. And you can see the news media doesn't want to address this. I mean, it's so bad, even in England, the Daily Mail is talking about this. Border czar Kamala skips crisis meeting with Mexican president to visit a daycare center and a bakery in New Jersey and send Secretary of State Blinken in her place. Kamala Harris is so busy hanging out with her buddy, Cory Booker, from the Senate, from her time in the Senate, so busy going out with him in New Jersey and having cupcakes. Meanwhile, our border is falling apart. Dow mentions a leader of the illegal aliens coming across the border was reported as saying they will cross the border, and I'm paraphrasing. Yes, they did. They have said this. They have said no one's going to stop them. That they're going to come in across our southern border because everyone is allowed across the border. And that's what the rest of the world is hearing. That's what the rest of the world is seeing. And they see that this is such an important issue that that Kamala Harris, who's in charge of the southern border, thinks it's so serious that rather than talking to the president of Mexico, she wants to go out and have some cupcakes. I'm sorry. If you're on the left, if you're a progressive, you think, Mike, you just don't understand. This is what the world is talking about. This is coming from England. I just showed you something. I'm showing you. This is from the Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom. This is what the rest of the world is seeing. If you think I'm wrong, tell me. Why is it more important for Kamala Harris to have a cupcake with Cory Booker than it is for her to actually spend time at the southern border or talk to the president of Mexico? Please explain to me why I think that her obligation, her priorities should be focused on maybe our southern border, maybe talking to the president of the country that borders us. Maybe that's more important than having a cupcake with her buddy from the Senate, Cory Booker. Please explain to me how the cupcake and Cory Booker are a bigger priority than the southern border. Because the only answer to that is, well, it's more important for the re-election, the midterm elections in 2022. So it's important for Cory Booker to be seen with Kamala Harris and having a cupcake for their election than it is to talk about the southern border that may cost them the election. That's the only reason why it's more important. So other than that biased political preference, please tell me why it's good for her. I see that Dow mentions that does not describe the mentality of refugees. That is that his comment about the illegal aliens crossing the border, he's saying that that's the verbiage of an invasion force. You can call them a lot of things. In particular, illegal aliens, because that's what they are. They're not undocumented migrants. They're not undocumented workers. They're illegal aliens. The documents they miss are any authorization to be in the United States. They are literally violating our laws. And if Congress and if the Democrats don't like that, change the law. You have control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Change the law. If you think our immigration laws are so bad, change them. You have the votes. Go do it. Same thing with they're saying, oh, we're going to have a debt crisis. Our debt limit needs to be raised. Democrats, you have control of all houses. You have the majority. If you want to change the debt ceiling, if you want to eliminate it or raise it, vote on it. You have the votes. You don't need a single Republican to do it. Go and vote for it. Why are you telling us you can't do something that you have the power to do? You don't like the immigration laws. You think that having an open border is important. Then vote on it. Vote on the conviction of your beliefs and stand for something. And don't play this Mickey Mouse game of, well, it's kind of important, but we don't want to talk about it. Stand up and let the American people know where you actually believe. If you believe that we deserve to have an open border and that illegal aliens should have a path to citizenship, which you are basically setting up, be honest and do it. Change the law. Vote for it. And then let the American public remember that. And in 2022, they'll be able to vote as well. But the reason they won't do this is because they know the American public do not agree. The American public, Democrats, conservatives, Republicans, libertarians, all agree the border shouldn't be open. Overwhelmingly, we agree. There shouldn't be an open border. People don't just get to walk into this nation and break our laws. And we shouldn't have to pay for them breaking our laws. We shouldn't have our money going to terrorists like the Taliban and ISIS and Al Qaeda. We shouldn't be giving them our money that we don't have. The American people know that. Oops. The American people know that. The world knows that. But apparently, Democrats don't know that. They're in a bubble and they don't care. And if you are on the left and if you disagree, I'm happy to hear what you have to say. Yes, I'm passionate. That doesn't mean I won't hear you. It doesn't mean I won't listen to you. I want to hear the other side. Tell me how I am wrong. This is the evidence I am showing you from credible sources around the world. Most of them are left-leaning sources. Tell me how I am misunderstanding this. Tell me how they are not playing politics and using the image of success, the vision, to try and gain political advantage as they are destroying our economy. We are seeing it. I've shown you the data. We're missing our economic data. We're not getting more jobs. More businesses aren't being created. Our economy is going downhill. We are devaluing our money. Inflation is growing enormously. Tell me how I am wrong in understanding these things. And we are teaching our kids to be violent psychopaths based on someone's either their political preference or just the color of their skin. If you disagree with these things, please tell me why. Dow mentions they don't vote on it because of the optics. As long as the policy is mildly bipartisan, they can shift blame to their opposition when the policy fails or produces catastrophic results. That is absolutely the truth, and that is obvious. It is the only reason why Democrats will not take the vote right now. They could raise the debt ceiling this second. They've had since January 20th. At any moment after January 20th, they could have raised the debt ceiling. They haven't because they'd want someone else to blame. They know it's a bad policy. They know it will fail. They know economically it is putting the country in a worse position. Same reason why they won't pass the American Families Plan. It's a failure. $3.5 trillion that allows the IRS to go into your bank account. We've reported that on this program before. We've heard the other news media are now talking about this. Yes, it authorizes the IRS to go out and to watch every single transaction you ever make so that they can tax every dime you get and to be able to study what you're doing with your money, how you're living your life, so that they can punish you for doing things they don't like. Because when they see that you gave money to a campaign, when they see that you gave money to a foreign country, for food and healthcare, maybe through one of the Christian groups, they see that. And that's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to give the government your money because you're not smart enough to spend your own money. You're not smart enough to take care of your own healthcare. The government's smarter than you. The government will do it for you. By the way, the government's made up of human beings who are no smarter than you, including politicians. They're not smarter than you. For 15 years, I do politics. I have spoken with members of Congress, of every elected office in the southern tier and central New York, and down in Congress in Washington, D.C. And I can guarantee you, in speaking with dozens, if not hundreds, of politicians and candidates, they're no smarter than the average guy walking down the street. So Jason mentions that politics change the color of your skin, according to Biden. Well, yeah, you can't be black if you don't vote the right way. Dow mentions that, sadly, Republicans in modern memory, when they have had the ability to shape policy, never create and move on good legislation to return limitations to governmental power. For example, Article 230 reforms. As much as I'm upset, the main reason why I'm talking about Democrats and the progressives right now is because they're in charge. Because they're the ones that are shaping the policy and moving it forward. Republicans couldn't stop it if they wanted to. But they're not. And you're right, Dow. They're not stopping the policy. They're not making the attempt. Well, they really aren't. I mean, there's a handful of people. There's Chip Roy out of Texas. There's mostly they're coming out of Texas. Chip Roy. There's Ron Johnson, who's making comments. There's Ted Cruz, who are making comments. Jordan. That's about it. I mean, there's Claudia Tenney. There's not a whole lot of people who are speaking up. And most of them don't get any real news time. Instead, we hear Chuck Schumer telling us, you have to do, the mandates are a good thing. You have to get vaccinated. You have to do what the government says. The government knows more about your health care than you do, than your doctor does. You have to give money to the Taliban. You have to open up our borders. We have to allow illegal aliens into our country. And we have to teach our kids critical race theory so that they can properly understand that being white is racist, unless you're a progressive Democrat, and being a minority means you're a victim for the rest of your life. This is what the news media is focused on. Maybe you think I'm misunderstanding that. Maybe you think, Mike, well, you just don't quite get it. And I see that Jason mentions it's been shown that the higher the tax, the lower the compliance and greater need for enforcement. They're taking workers out of the border and into the IRS. It's crazy, but you're right. But when I say that that they are damaging the United States internationally, that the world is seeing that the United States is weak, that they see the United States falling apart. We see the comments today from October 6th. Biden says he and China's Xi agreed to abide by the Taiwan agreement. This is reported by Reuters. On October, they said President Xi Jinping out of China, the communist Chinese president, says that he wants to take over Taiwan. He says he wants to take Taiwan by peace or force if necessary. He says this after the United States. He wasn't making these statements until after August 15th, when the Taliban kicked Joe Biden's ass. And now Xi Jinping is saying, hey, I want Taiwan. And the United States is too weak to stop us from taking it. And I will take it peacefully or I will take it by violence. That is what the Chinese president of the Communist nation of China has said. Joe Biden, in reaction to that, says that there is the Taiwan agreement. He says, and I quote, I've spoken with Xi about Taiwan. We agree. We'll abide by the Taiwan agreement. We made it clear that I don't think he should be doing anything other than abiding by the agreement. Here's the thing that's important. There is no such thing as a Taiwan agreement. Let me say it again. There is no such thing as a Taiwan agreement. It does not exist. There is no agreement between the United States and China about Taiwan. There is no agreement. Joe Biden just said that he had a phone call, that he was speaking with Xi Jinping, the communist leader of China, about an agreement that doesn't exist. Do you think that China thinks that the United States is weak? Do you think that when their leader is being told, you're going to listen to that agreement, right? You're going to follow the Taiwan agreement, right? It doesn't exist. Of course he says, yes, sure, whatever you want, you deranged, demented old man. And I know it's going to be okay because General Milley is going to call my generals to tell me if you guys decide to have any military action. I'm getting a heads up. I can send my troops into Taiwan tomorrow. Biden has no idea. He doesn't know what's going on. He thinks there's agreements that don't exist. And Milley's going to tell me before you ever put any troops together to actually do anything about it. Of course, China thinks the United States is weak because we are. Not the people, the government. Under Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the progressives, we are weak because we're doing stupid things. Let me get back to some of the comments here. Jason mentions more illegals entered the United States than jobs created last month. There were more people who entered, well, that was only 194,000. There were over 200,000 illegal aliens that entered the United States in the month of September alone. And so far this year, we see almost as many illegal aliens have entered the United States than the population of certain states. There are states that have almost the same population as the number of people who have illegally entered the nation. There are cities that have smaller populations, and I'm talking about major cities. I'm talking about cities like Salt Lake City. That's not a small city. It has through 750,000 people. More illegal aliens entered the United States than live in Salt Lake City. That's terrifying. Dow mentions that I bet you Xi Jinping had a good chuckle considering that the Chinese Communist Party has no agreement about Taiwan, the Taiwan agreement between Taiwan and America. I know. This doesn't exist. This is our leadership. This is what the rest of the world is looking at. They're saying he's agreeing to something that doesn't exist. This man is out of his mind. He is lost. And this is terrifying. And we have a general who's saying, don't worry, I'm here to tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to warn you before American troops start taking action, which could cost American troops lives. Again, this is why I want General Milley. I don't want him to resign. I want him tried for treason. I want him to be tried for violating his oath of office. The UCMJ is very clear. There are at least 5 different articles that he should be tried on, and he should be tried, and I believe he is guilty and should be removed without any retirement, without any of his honors. He should be stripped of his rank, and he should be discharged from the military in disgrace because he is acting disgracefully. He is endangering the United States. He is empowering our enemies, and China is showing us just how empowered they feel. That they are threatening Taiwan, our ally, that we're supposed to protect. And the answer that's coming from America via Biden is, well, there's this make-believe agreement that we have that no one knows about, that no one knows what the terms are, that says, oh, yeah, you're just going to not do it, right? Right? You agree with us, right? This is the Biden conversation. If you think I am wrong, if you think the sources that I am pointing out, that Reuters and some of the other sources that I am showing you are not credible enough, please let me know. If you think my conclusions based on the international data that I am providing to you, if you think it's incorrect, call in 607-242-1582. Leave a comment. Michael Bowie, Klaus, so many others, Ed Z, Jason, People are reaching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive. We look forward to hearing your comment too. I want to hear you. If you think I am wrong, if you think our conversation and the people who are commenting, if you think we are misunderstanding this, please let us know. Mike Bowie mentions that we are becoming a second-class citizens in our own country. Some of us are, Mike. Some of us. If you're not vaccinated, if you happen to be if you're not a progressive, if you disagree with critical race theory, if you don't support giving money to the Taliban, if you happen to oppose the Communist Party and socialism, then yes, you are a second-class citizen in our own country. And that seems to be a lot of people. And that's why, as we started the show off with, they're talking about on Twitter, we're seeing the left very, very concerned that people are saying, you know, this is kind of leading us to a second civil war. There is a massive division that is not a simple fix. And our nation is being split apart because we are watching the progressive leaders pull us apart further and saying there is no way to cross this divide. They're gung-ho on socialism and they're not pulling back. So how do you make an agreement? There is no middle ground on you're either a socialist or you're an evil person who is a racist and you want to destroy America. That's the point of view that we hear from the left. That's why the left feels empowered to attack people on the right, people who are conservative, or even people who are neutral, who aren't agreeing with them, and they feel like they can attack them, as happened in downtown Binghamton yesterday. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute, because I really want to talk about that for a little bit. Klaus. Hello, Klaus. Good to see you again. Klaus mentions that DC politicians and now some military leaders in bed with China for business and money. I agree. And we see that often. Just to finish up here with, and I want to just make it clear, Taiwan has more balls than America right now. This is the Taiwanese president, and she has more balls than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris tied together. And I want to be clear what she says here. So her name is Tsai Ing-wen. And I'm sure I got that wrong, but I believe it's Tsai Ing-wen, said in a speech on Sunday that she is going to she rejects China, and that Taiwan will not bow to pressure. And to ensure that nobody, she says, to ensure that nobody can force Taiwan to take the path China has laid out for us. And she says the path that China offers neither a free and democratic way of life for Taiwan nor sovereignty for 23 million people. And she points out that Hong Kong is the example of why she doesn't trust China, why China doesn't believe in freedom, why China is a liar. For those who don't remember, the Hong Kong government was captured by the Chinese government, the communists, and they disappeared. 45 people that ran Hong Kong disappeared because they wanted freedom. Because, if you remember, in 2019 and 2018, they were chanting and singing the American anthem. And because they were waving American flags and screaming for freedom and chanting the American anthem, they all disappeared. Just like the Uyghurs in China, we believe that they may have been put into concentration camps in China, just like the Uyghurs have done, and they disappear. And this is what they want to do to Taiwan. And Taiwan has the balls to say, not going to happen. She is willing to stand up and say, we're not going to allow you to do that. A country of 23 million people. We're talking about people, that's less people than live in some of the Chinese capital cities. 23 million people. And they're willing to stand up to China, the second largest army in the world. And Joe Biden instead is saying, oh, we've got a make-believe agreement. We've got a make-believe agreement. Aren't you happy? Isn't everyone safe? Okay, Taiwan has bigger balls than Joe Biden. That's just a fact. And yes, Jason, you're right. Biden's son was paid enough to let China take back Taiwan. Remember, there was the Hunter, and we know for a fact, it was always a fact, it has always been a fact that Hunter Biden's laptop reveals that the Biden family is directly connected to the Chinese government, that they were paid $10 million for influence peddling. That is a fact. It has been reported. The FBI has an investigation on that, though we won't be told what the status of that investigation is. And even though we had a blacklisting of all news about that initially, it has 4 months later, has become current. It is a pattern now. 4 months after the fact, we found out it is all true. The news media that told us it was a lie in October, in January told us it's absolutely true. It really is happening. They really do have these emails are in fact true, that the Hunter Biden and the Biden family did in fact negotiate and did in fact make deals with the Chinese government for $10 million. Are we surprised now that Joe Biden saying he has some imaginary Taiwan agreement? I don't know. Is he talking about one of the deals that Hunter Biden made? Is that on one of the emails that is on Hunter Biden's laptop? Is that something that the FBI has found and just won't report to us? I don't know. But it makes you wonder. Because we do know they did get paid $10 million. We do know, according to the emails, that are factual and correct and corroborated, they're real. We do know that Hunter Biden gives about 10% of this money to Joe Biden, thus connecting Joe Biden to the Chinese government directly. There's a problem here, folks. And at least Taiwan has some balls. Dow mentions, it's obvious to me that by the 1990s, our leadership should have abandoned the idea that Western investments in China would ever change them politically and return to upholding Taiwanese sovereignty. What we should know and what our government does know, two different things. And I keep begging and I keep asking, and I'll do it again. If you disagree, you can call in 607-242-1582. If you disagree, you can type in on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive, and tell me, Mike, you just don't understand Taiwan. You just don't understand our relationship with Taiwan. You don't understand the agreements that the United States has with China. You don't understand that Hunter Biden's laptop isn't important. Please tell me why. Tell me why the emails verifying that the Bidens have received money directly from the Chinese Communist Party have no influence on any of their actions. Please explain to me how. Because the Bidens aren't doing it. They've avoided that subject completely. The news media won't talk about it. So tell me how I'm wrong. Tell me how that doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's the right one. All right. So, and all of this comes back to, this is a situation. This is the situation that we find our nation in. I think you guys will agree. We find ourselves in a very weak position in the United States, with a lot of division in the United States. And we see that consistently, especially through social media. The same social media like Facebook and Instagram that is willing to be toxic and to encourage suicide, that in this realm of weakness in our nation and this negative influence from social media, we have, and the critical race theory being taught to our kids, teaching them to hate people that don't agree with them because their truth is not the same as someone else's truth, which isn't truth. That's not truth at all. That's redefining what the meaning of truth is. There's only one truth. There's your opinion, There's your conclusions, but there's only one truth. And we're teaching these kids these very mixed up ideas. And that's resulting in the fact that these kids are going around, and when they are confronted with something that doesn't make sense to them, when they are confronted with something that breaks with their viewpoints, they decide that they're going to be violent, that they enact violent actions, that they go out and they commit, they attack people for no reason. Yes, I'm about to talk about the, not Columbus Day, which should be fine. And yeah, now you can't say Columbus Day. Now it's Indigenous Peoples Day. No, it's not. It's Columbus Day. Leave it alone. The indigenous peoples didn't find the Europeans. The Europeans found the indigenous people. The guy who did that was Columbus. Or you can say Americus Vespucci, who happens to be someone else, or I think that was his name, who was one of the Vikings that came in and first found America. Fine, whichever. But here's the thing. I want to talk about the violence that happened in Binghamton yesterday, because this is an example of the violence we see throughout New York State and around the rest of the country. And I want to be very clear, this violence is getting worse and worse and worse. And it's really a big deal. Hang on, I'm getting comments from people. Okay, nothing important. I want to deal with this, because I want you to imagine that what you're about to see is a protest by BLM. I want you to think this is a Black Lives Matter protest. I want you to think of Antifa protesting. I want you to think of any of the progressive ideology. I want you to imagine that this is a protest for pro-abortion, to be able to do late-term abortion. This is what you're about to see. I want you to think of that this is what the group is standing for. It's not true, but imagine if they were, and you see this. Okay, I want you to see this, and I want you to tell me what you think about this. It's coming. It's coming. There. Did you hear that? I want you. No. Okay, I want you to hear about. I want you to see this again, and again, I want you to think of this as if it were a Black Lives Matter event, as if it were any pro-left organization, any pro-left group. And I want you to see that one portion again. I know it comes by real fast, but I'm going to explain exactly what you just saw and what's being done about it. But I want you to see that one more time. Here it comes. Okay, did you see that? That young man just threw what I believed was a rock. This guy. And if you, by the way, if you know who he is, please let us know, because there is charges that are being pressed. He attempted to commit an assault. In New York State, it's called harassment. He threw what we believed was a rock at the time, threw that at us. He attacked us. Now, is that the most violent attack we've ever seen in our life? No, absolutely not. But here's the thing. It's a peaceful protest. And if he had thrown what may be an egg, a brown egg, maybe a rock, if he did that to BLM, what do you think would have happened? If he did that to any pro-left group, if he did that to Democratic Socialists of America when they gathered together, what do you think would happen? This is something that the rest of the news media, there is not a single news station that has this video, that has this evidence, that covered this event. This happened yesterday, October 9th, at the fourth vaccine mandate protests. Not anti-vaccines, the mandate protests that occurred in Binghamton, New York. The fourth one. No one from the news media covered this. No one. There's a blackout on news about vaccine mandates in the United States. You can't find news really anywhere except from the small media outlets like myself that are actually even covering that this is happening in our communities across the nation and in New York State. That people are protesting, that 30,000 people have lost their jobs because of this violation of their rights. And when people come out to say they believe in the right to work, this is what they're fighting for, because the news media likes to misrepresent this. People gathered, over 100 people yesterday, gathered together to say that they want healthcare workers to work, that doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers should be allowed to work. They're fighting for their right to work, something that you've heard from the Democrats saying that they stand for that. They believe in being able to stand up for people to be able to work. Meanwhile, appointed Governor Hochul has stripped people of their right to work in New York State. People who are knowledgeable of the science, who are aware of the risk, who have lived with the risk for 18 months on the front lines and wish to continue to stay on the front lines, to continue to take care of people and their health care. And New York State stripped them of that. And the only answer to someone saying, I want to work, I am aware of the risk, let me continue to do the job I have been doing, the only answer that they had came from, this is coming from the left, and their answer is, let's use some violence. Let's intimidate you, let's attack you, let's needlessly come out and be violent. This is what our schools are teaching our kids. This is what has been the result. That little twit there, he decides that his big ballsy move, his way of intimidating us, his argument to change the subject is to try and attack people, to try and hurt people, to inflict violence on people. You can say a lot of things about what you may believe. You can support the vaccine mandate protests or not. You can support people being able to work on the front lines as they have been or not. You can believe that the people that we called heroes in 2020 are still heroes in 2021. You could believe that or not. But that doesn't mean you get to inflict violence. Imagine, I'm a black man. There are other black men there. Was he doing it because of racial profiling? Was he doing this because he's a racist? Did he throw rocks because he saw an American flag and not the Antifa flag? Is that the reason why he did it? Is it because he's been taught that anyone who has an opinion that isn't the opinion that he sees on CNN and MSNBC, even when those news channels are wrong and they get it wrong and they admit 4 to 6 months after the fact that they were wrong, anyone who doesn't agree with the message that he gets fed from TV, then they aren't human and they need to be attacked. And if we let this go away, if we let these little petulant children, these cowards, and let me say it again, he's a coward. If we allow cowards to try and act out in violence, lash out in violence, and if we allow that to happen, I guarantee then you will see more violence at other events, because this is a moment of learning for our nation, for our community. This is an important thing to keep in mind. If you can treat people as less than human and attack them because they don't agree with your political preferences, then our nation is in a very, very dark place. And I want to talk about this for a little bit. Let me go to some of the comments here. Yes, Dal, it was Leif Erikson. That was the Viking. But there was also an American, maybe an Italian, called Americus Vespucci, which is why it's called America and not some other name. But I believe that was it. Dow goes on, either BLM or Democratic Socialists of America would have hunted this kid down, drug him out of his house, and tried to beat the crap out of him, or they'd start a massive Twitter cancellation campaign and smear the crap out of him, or both. And I would tell you, Dow, I think they would have done both. Mike Bowie mentions that he didn't see it. I can't slow it down. There's really no way to slow it down. What I can tell you is what you're seeing on the camera is he threw, and if you listen carefully, you'll hear it. He threw the rock, what I believed was a rock, I'm told might be an egg, a brown egg. He threw it at the crowd and then ran. And the camera's catching him as he's running. He gets to the door where he believes he's safe. And this is a student housing facility that he's at for Binghamton University students. So I don't know if he's a student or if he's just staying with students. Don't know. But he's there and he believes he's safe. So then he decides to taunt the people. And again, I'll show you the image. There he is. He wants to taunt the people who peacefully were going about their lives. And then he runs away inside. Now, I want to be clear. This video has been provided to the police. The charges will be pressed against this young man. And if anyone knows his name, that will help us to have him arrested and to charges being pressed against him. I'm not doxing him. This is a news event. This is his actions of violence as caught on video. This is a police action, or there is an arrest that is pending for his crime, which he will be tried for. And he will either be found innocent or not. I'm sure in New York State, he will get released on bail or without bail, and he'll be back on the street the same day. But we should never let this stand. We shouldn't let this stand because the precedent is too important. This is something that no one would agree with if it happened anywhere else. If you threw an egg or a rock at BLM, if you threw it at any protest group, if people who are protesting against Israel and they're supporting Hamas, the terrorist organization, throw away a rock at them, see what would happen. Jason mentions Ethel don't want to report it because they may get their account banned from YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Maybe some people don't want to report this. I will. Oh, they don't want to report this because they may get their account banned. You know what? There's no ban. This was a news event. This happened. I've already published the video of the full thing. You can go to see my coverage yesterday of the vaccine mandate protest, and you'll see the video in there. It's at the end. But this is something we should not allow stand. We shouldn't let, and you say, well, it's not really that violent. It was only a rock or a egg. Really? Doesn't matter. Maybe it's a bomb. It's a gun. It's a bullet, an arrow. It doesn't matter what the one thing is. It's one nuke. It's all the same thing. It's violence. If this coward wanted to protest, if he didn't like it, if he wanted to protest against, he didn't agree with the vaccine mandate protest. He believes vaccine mandates are the godsend and that the government is the smartest thing that has ever existed and it never gets anything wrong. If that's the position he wants to have, fantastic. He could stand there and shout out anything he wants to. He can make any comment he wants to. That's what the First Amendment is about. No one is trying to silence his voice. He can say he disagrees till the cows come home. What he can't do is commit violence. That coward doesn't get to commit violence. He's such a coward. He's so pitiful that he isn't willing to even stand by his conviction of what he did, because he doesn't know what else to do, I suspect. I suspect he was never taught what to do in that situation or what were the consequences of having that kind of reaction. He's been taught, whether at Binghamton University or in high school before that, he's been taught by his socialist and progressive-leaning teachers that the only way to fight against an idea is to use violence, not to use your words, not to use logic, but to use violence. And they didn't tell him, and when you use violence, there is going to be a reaction. There are consequences, that he will get arrested. And that and there are other consequences too, especially if someone had been injured, that could physically harm him as well. I'm not wishing harm on anyone. I am not advocating for violence against this kid. I am not asking anyone to retaliate against this child, this coward. But I am saying the thing they're not taught is, yeah, there's a reaction that happens. Things don't just stop. If he expected that when he threw this rock or egg, that we were suddenly just going to stop and go, oh, well, we got to stop the protest now. We can't continue. Our convictions aren't nearly as strong as his violence. I'm sorry, that's not how it works. If he thought that because he threw something at us, that he attempted to attack us, that he was exhibiting his violence, that we would just go, oh, we've got to cower down. Let's beg for forgiveness because this one violent coward decided that he wanted to try and harm us. Oh, well, we have to just give up now. That's not how it works. You want to know why America is becoming more divided? Why you're hearing more and more people saying that there's a potential of a civil war? Because the left is being told that they can use violence against anyone who disagrees with their points of view. And they're not being told, oh, and those people you're using violence against will fight back. That they will stand for their convictions and they will resist. And using violence against them is not going to get your way. I know that they have been taught when they watch 2020 and they see the cities burned down, when they see arson on TV and told it's mostly peaceful, when they watch DAs and prosecutors allow thousands of criminals out of jail, they think, well, there's no consequence. I can commit violence and it's okay. I'm sorry, you're wrong. That kid's going to get arrested. Let me go back to some of the comments. Klaus says, it's a sin New York Democrat politicians destroy New York City morally and economically for the New World Order. Dow mentions that there has become two thresholds to define peaceable in modern language. The first is one subset that incorporates violence, like we saw last year. The second threshold is applied to loud, angry speech as equivalent to violence. It's interesting. Mike Bowie mentions he's anti-vaccine mandate, but I didn't care for the mandate. I understand many people have different expressions. And you know what? I'm not telling anyone. And when I cover a news event, I'm not there to correct people. That's their expression. And that's the same thing as someone saying, F Joe Biden. That's an expression of their feelings about him. Do I have to agree with it? No. If I'm at an event and that happens, will I record it? Yes. Will I publish it? Yes. Whether it's from the left or the right, I don't care. I cover a lot of news events. So maybe you don't agree with every word that is said, and that's fine. Mike, I love that you're mentioning that. But you know what the answer wasn't, Mike? Trying to punch someone, throwing a rock at them, throwing eggs, committing violence. That's not the solution. If you want to say, oh, I don't like the words that you're using to convey that idea, the answer isn't let's commit violence. Or, yeah, let's go Brandon is the new saying amongst the NASCAR crowd. Klaus mentions BLM and Antifa think they're fighting against fascists, but if they really look hard, who they are supported by are the ones they should fear. They are, and they admit, BLM, Antifa, they admit, they use fascist tactics because they think that's going to stop fascism. They don't realize that they're not just using fascist tactics, they are the fascists. And look at what their leaders do. Look at Patricia Cullors. What has she done? She took the money from BLM and decided to buy herself 5 houses. She's an avowed, self-avowed communist. And she's out buying property, not in the black community. She's going to other communities and buying 5 houses for herself and her personal family. And she's living a very well-to-do life compared to the people she's telling to go out and burn things down. She's using them as a political tool to advance her personal life. We see the same thing with this coward at downtown Binghamton. He is a tool. These are tools. They are being used by other people, smarter people, people who are not there present. They've trained this kid to go out and be the frontline troops to get decimated for a cause that doesn't even exist. What's his goal? So that, now the government gets to have more control, that the government gets to decide his health care for the rest of his lifetime, so that the government can say, you know what, we're going to not give you this treatment, or you're going to become a woman now because we, the government, decide there aren't enough trans people. So we've now selected you for body modifications. Because you know what, if the government can tell you, if they can micromanage your health care, they can tell you what's going to happen to your body. They can make that decision if you give them that power. And that power is the same power as saying you're mandated to get a vaccine. And let me be very clear. We're not telling you to get a vaccine or not get a vaccine. That's a decision for you personally based on your personal medical health history, and you should discuss that with a medical doctor and your medical doctor and go over your personal health care choices and decide what's best for you. That's part of the Hippocratic Oath. That's what doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals are there for, to decide what's best, to help you decide what's best for you. The government doesn't care about you. They make blanket statements for everyone. They don't know what's going on with your life, and they don't care. That's why they're trying to mandate that people who already had COVID have to have a vaccine. Why they're telling people who are cancer patients on chemotherapy that they have to have the shots, that they have to get the medication as well. This is the problem. And we need to stand up and speak against this. And I can't speak about it so strongly enough because I'm one of the people that he was throwing whatever it was against. If it was a rock, if it was an egg, I'm one of the people he was trying to attack. I was covering the event. That landed, and if you listen carefully, you heard that rock or that egg hit the ground not far from me. The camera recorded the sound, meaning it had to be very close to me. So he was attacking me. Was he attacking me because I'm a black man and I'm not doing what I'm told? Is he attacking the group because they're people who are doing something that they weren't told to do? Is he that subservient a coward? We'll never know. He didn't open up his mouth. He wouldn't say anything. The only thing he was taught to do was be violent and run away. And again, I'm not advocating violence by anyone. But I am telling you, there are consequences when violence happens. And if we allow this violence to go unaddressed, it will be worse. This idiot, this coward, is no doubt trying to brag to his friend that he's some kind of hero, that he's some kind of victim, that somehow he was just doing the right thing. And he's going to tell his friends, don't you think you should do that too? Next time you should stand up with me and do the same thing. Be violent. And that's how you get the Portland riots. That's how you get the riots in Minnesota. That's how you get the increase in crime that we see in 22 states around this nation, including in Austin and Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, New York City. Because these are people who've been taught violence is the only answer. That when someone says something you don't like, well, that's violent. So you get the right to be violent against them too, which is idiotic. And if there is anyone who disagrees with me on this, I want to hear your voice. If you think I am wrong, please tell me why. If you don't think that was an attack, please tell me why. If you don't think that it's worth being upset about, tell me why. If you don't think that kid should be arrested for that violence, tell me why. If you think it's okay to attack certain groups of people and not other groups of people, please explain to me what's the difference. Besides politics, what's the difference? What's the reason that you say it's okay to attack one group of people, but not okay to attack another group of people? Especially when you're attacking people who are peaceful, who have done nothing wrong. They have violated no law, and they have not infringed on your freedom at all. Please tell me, why? What's the difference? What justifies this? I look forward to hearing from the left, and I've never heard from the left. Every time I ask these kind of questions, they never answer this. I would love to hear from someone on the left. I would love to hear from that coward and tell me what gives them the right to commit violence against certain people, peaceful individuals, American citizens that are only doing their lives. Imagine if he had thrown the egg at a dreamer, illegal aliens in America who are protesting, saying, like they did with Senator Sienema, when they demand that Senator Sienema has to do things for them, even though they're not her constituents. They're not American citizens. Dow mentions the Supreme Court in 1964, quote, the principle that debate on public issues should be uninhibited. It may well include vehement, caustic, unpleasant, sharp attacks on government and public officials, end quote. Yes. Freedom of speech doesn't mean it's pleasant, doesn't mean you only get to hear the things you like, doesn't mean it is expressly there for the things you don't like, for the things you don't want to hear, about those things that you absolutely disagree with. That's what freedom of speech is to protect. And it doesn't mean that if you are faced with something you don't like, the only answer is violence. You don't get that excuse. That doesn't work that way. That's a cowardly and pitiful action. And we denounce it on this channel, me as a person, and we will enforce the law. We will see this person get arrested. We will get that child arrested. Because that's what he deserves. Not just because he broke the law, but because he's a coward who doesn't know how to speak, to use the freedoms that he has, like the freedom of free speech, to stand there and defend some value he has. Because he has no values. He stands for nothing. That coward stands for nothing. Because if he had any balls, if he had any conviction, if he had any belief, he would have actually stood there and just, instead of trying to throw rocks and eggs, rather than trying to commit violence and attack people, he would have expressed himself. He would have said what he thinks. He would have said why he disagrees. He would have made his point of view known. Maybe even convinced people that he's right. Instead, that coward, that pitiful little child, that obviously failed in his education, failed in his upbringing, that child instead decided to throw a tantrum and act out violently. I'm looking forward to seeing him in court. I'm looking forward to seeing him get convicted. I don't want this to be something that's going to go to the DA and they're simply going to bypass it and let him get a plea bargain. I want to see that kid convicted. Is it cruel? No. Is it? But Mike, it might change that kid's life forever to go to jail. Good. His life needs a change. He's obviously on a very dark path. When he thinks that the answer to someone's speech is violence, he's on a very dark path and a very dangerous path. And he's not the only one. And that kid needs to be the example to everyone else that if you act in violence against peaceful individuals that have not provoked you, that you know what, there are consequences, and those consequences have many forms. One of them being arrested. Another is having a record for the rest of your life that follows you that says you were convicted for committing acts of violence. And if someone thinks I'm wrong about that, if you think I don't understand, if you think I'm being overreacting, tell me why. I am literally open and asking, tell me why. By the way, if you've made it this far into the show, please do like, share, subscribe, especially subscribe, so that more people are able to express their points of view. Have you seen Klaus and Dal and Jason and Mike and so many others have done on this program today and in many other days? It does make a difference. And if you made it this far, you found something of interest in the show, so please subscribe so that we'll be able to continue to do this. But yeah, I'm asking though, folks. Do you think I'm wrong? Dow mentions that is something I saw in action every day working with certain portions of the population. Natural consequences seem to be given no weight in consideration during decision making. Yeah, because I mean, I would have imagined that in elementary school, you would have figured out that if you throw a rock at someone, if you commit an act of violence against someone, that person's going to retaliate. There's going to be an obvious and immediate reaction. And I'm not suggesting that violence is a good thing. But if you initiate violence, people will protect themselves. That is a natural instinct of every living thing on this planet. If you attack anything on this planet, it's going to defend itself if it can. And this coward has been taught to reject natural instinct and thinks that, well, there is no consequence. It's a joke. It's funny. Come on. You look at the picture. This coward is laughing. He thinks it's funny. He thinks it's okay because he's not attacking human beings. He's attacking non-human beings that disagree with what he was told he should believe because he's a parrot. He's a tool. He doesn't think for himself. And I say that not because of his political beliefs. I don't care what his political beliefs are. I'm not saying it because of the color of his skin. I don't care what his race is. I'm not saying it because he's a male. I don't care. He could be a female. Meaningless to me. I'm saying it because of his actions. Because he didn't think at all. He didn't think about the consequences, didn't think about what he was doing. He did what he was taught. He was a mindless drone. And that drone decided, well, the only thing I can do in the face of someone saying, I don't agree with you, saying that there is an alternative, is to be violent. And this is what we are teaching our kids. This is what kids at Binghamton University are learning. This is what kids in colleges are learning. This is the ultimate result of critical race theory. And it's not just happening in upstate New York. It's happening across this country. We see events like this everywhere. Can't stand for that. And yet if you let this stand, it only gets worse. And I would say the same exact thing if this was, and I've covered, and there's video evidence, I've covered BLM, I've covered various protests and organizations, and groups going out and protesting whatever they think. And I would say the same thing about any of them. No one should use violence against them. These groups should not be violent, nor should anyone in reacting to them. People should be able to express their views. And if you don't agree, you still get to express your point of view. That's freedom. That's free speech. The moment you become violent, now that's a crime. It's an entirely different thing. Dow says, why is it important to teach natural law as put forth in the philosophy of John Locke's 2 treatises of civil government? Yes, this is one of the reasons why natural law is important. Jason mentions, as far as we know, he could have been a white supremacist attacking a black reporter. And it may be just that. Maybe he recognized me. Maybe he knows that I cover news events. Maybe he knows that I am a conservative Republican that does political commentary for the last 15 years. Maybe he's seen my 1,200 videos or the 2,000 articles I've written over the last 10 years. Maybe. And maybe it was because of the color of my skin. Maybe that coward is also a racist. We don't know. But it could be, because again, that rock or egg landed very close to me. That's why you hear it on the audio. So he was aiming somewhere in my direction. Hard to say it wasn't me. He doesn't look like he's the most athletic or coordinated individual. He's definitely not playing football. So maybe he was trying to hit me and just couldn't aim right. And maybe it's because of race. Maybe he saw a black man that wasn't doing what he was told black people should do, which is be a Democrat and be progressive and say yes to everything from the Democratic progressive point of view. And when he saw a black man not doing that, well, obviously that means I can't be black and I can't be human. I must be an evil racist. So he was attacking that. Maybe. And yet I would still say the same thing. It's vile. It's cowardly. And it's the wrong reaction. And he has neither the mental fortitude nor the mental capability to understand that there's a better way to make his voice heard. Actually, he didn't have his voice heard because his voice hasn't been heard. Instead, what we have seen is that he has a lack of the ability to communicate. And that's sad. And he's a very common example of what we're seeing in our colleges and in our high schools. Yeah, and Dow mentions that YouTube is censoring comments. Not surprised. God knows they might wipe out my entire channel just because of this video. I've said that for a couple of videos now. Because they might. Their rules change on a regular basis. They make up rules as they go. They define things as vaguely as possible, giving themselves the power to destroy anything. Except for the people who broke the same rules that they're enforcing, they let them be. When we've heard Joe Biden provide misinformation, factual misinformation about factual evidence that is out there. Listen to Joe Biden talking at the CNN town halls and listen to him talking about, say, the pandemic. And he misinforms the public about what the vaccines are capable of and what the results will be. He's actively misinforming the public, and that's still on YouTube, and CNN has no problems. But they will attack me instead. I tell you, it's amazing to me. And I am very upset about this because it should be something we're upset about. And the left should be just as upset as anyone else because they are being portrayed in the worst light possible. They are being portrayed as cowards. They are being portrayed as mindless drones that are incapable of expressing their thoughts and their ideas, and that their ideas are so worthless that the only answer to someone saying, I disagree, is violence. And I like to tell you, there are people who are smarter than that. I've talked to a lot of people on the left. I talked to a lot of progressives. There are a lot of them that are very smart. that they actually have arguments. They have reasons why they have the beliefs they have. Whether I agree with them or not is meaningless. And their answer isn't violence. But this is how they're being portrayed. If I was someone on the left, if I was one of the Democratic Socialists of America, especially the Ithaca chapter that believes in violence, if I happen to be a member of the Democratic Party, I'd be very upset right now. I would be wanting to come on and say, no, Mike, that doesn't represent us. That's not the way we look at things. If I was a member of BLM or Antifa or even Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, I would want to come on right now and say, no, we don't believe in violence. We don't believe that the answer to someone disagreeing with us is violence. But I suspect many of these groups are not doing that. Many of these people are not doing that is because they do believe that that is the actual answer. That they do believe that when someone says, I disagree, that is an act of violence, and therefore they should be violent against them because that's what they've been taught. And if you don't think that's separating America, if you don't think that's causing, that's a reason why we could possibly go into a second civil war, if you don't think that's a reason why the nation is dividing more and more, then you're not understanding what that really means. Yes, Klaus, I agree. Communists are known for their violence. And that's how they get things done, through violence. They don't resolve anything. They just get violent and they are in control. Dow mentions, the problem is, the more of these mindless drones are modeled to be utilized to create chaos through violent activism, the more catastrophic the casualties when they outlive their usefulness. And I agree. It's when you're a drone, you have no rights, you have no ability, and you're only as useful as when they need someone to be violent. I really find it sad. I do. I would feel bad for the kid because obviously he's been let down by his teachers and perhaps even his parents, or maybe he's rebelling against his parents. I don't know. But obviously someone failed him along the way. Obviously he learned the wrong lessons in life. And he's going to have a life that's going to be very difficult if he thinks this is the appropriate way to deal with the difficulties of life. If that's the only reaction he knows, if that's the only way he knows how to react to things, that kid's going to have a really depressing and pretty miserable life. Because there's a lot of things in life that he's not going to agree with. And if the only thing he knows to do with all of them is to react negatively, to act with violence, yeah, he's going to have a real depressed life. I can't imagine that that he has a girlfriend. If that's the way he reacts to things, or boyfriend, significant other, whatever relationship he has, I don't know, maybe he thinks he's a toaster. I could care less. But whatever, he's going to have a really rough life. And he kind of deserves it. And he deserves to be mocked. He deserves to be called the coward that he is. And if he doesn't like it, too bad. I'm not doxing him. I'm using my voice to comment on what I think about what he did. And the causes of what he did. And the consequences of what's going to happen. Because as I said, the police have been informed. Charges are going to be pressed. We are looking for him to be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of law. Because I don't need to be violent with him. No one needs to be violent with him. He just needs to suffer the consequences of his own actions. And his friends need to see the consequences of his actions and to learn a lesson that obviously no one taught him before in his life. Because that's how you teach a mindless drone. You let them live with the consequences of their actions. And hopefully that teaches them and they learn not to have those same reactions. Hopefully in the future that means he won't be violent when someone disagrees with him. I doubt it though. Because we've seen the BLM protests. We've seen people burn down their own cities, their own homes, their own businesses in the name of BLM. And today, they are homeless. They have no jobs. They have no businesses. They're dependent on a government that decides whether or not it's going to pay them and how much. They've lost all autonomy. They lost their rights. They lost their freedom. BLM continues to move forward. BLM hasn't changed its tactics, and their lives are ruined. Their community is ruined. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And I definitely don't wish that on the southern tier of New York. I don't wish that on Binghamton, Broome County. I don't wish that on anywhere. And I am striving to make sure that Binghamton doesn't become the next Portland, that Binghamton doesn't become the next Minneapolis. Because if that kid is willing to do that, is he willing to burn down the park in Recreation Park? Is he willing to burn down buildings that are owned by Republicans and conservatives and libertarians? Maybe even other Democrats? Because, by the way, that crowd of over 100 people, nearly 200 people, there were Democrats, Republicans, progressives, everybody in that crowd. People of every color and shade, every religion in America, they were part of that crowd. That anti-vaccine mandate crowd. That anti-vaccine mandate crowd. They were filled with people from throughout this community. And yet he would use violence against them. Would he burn down their buildings? Would he burn down their businesses? Why not? If he thinks that the proper reaction to someone's voice, someone's words is violence, then where does that line stop? If he's willing to throw rocks and eggs, is he willing to burn down buildings? Is he willing to physically assault someone? Maybe when he has a group of his friends and he thinks he has enough of a crowd, because obviously cowards can't do things on their own, he needs a group of people so that they have a mob so they can do that. Which then brings us to Portland, where one mob fights another mob, and that burns down their city in Portland, burns down Minneapolis, burns down 22 cities around the country, increases crime. No one wins. I don't wish that on anyone. I don't wish that on my community for sure. Jason saying I'm making an assumption he's a he. Yeah, I am. And if he doesn't like it, I don't care. Looks like a boy. Looks like a little boy child. So I'm calling him boy child. If he had some balls, he would have been speaking. I would have got him on video. He could have said he disagreed with the organization. He could say he disagreed with the movement. And he could have self-identified whatever, thing he thinks he might be. He didn't. So he loses that. He doesn't get to say. He's a he. Until he has the balls to be able to speak for himself. If you want, I'll call him it, considering I don't know what he otherwise would be. I can call him it, but it would still be a coward. Unless someone thinks I would love to hear. Because as many people as I ask about this, I never hear people on the left who want to publicly say and defend these kind of cowardly acts. They just get real silent. The news media didn't cover this. They wouldn't cover this. You know what? The video's been out for a while. I know members of the press in this region. Not one of them's called my phone. Not one of them sent me a message. No one sent me an email. No one saying, gee, Mike, let's get this story out there. Maybe the public needs to know that there are individuals who are using violence against people's words, and maybe we should get the public to be aware and say, don't do that. The news media should do that, but since they won't do their job, I will. And maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think, Mike, you're overreacting. Let me ask you, do you think I'm overreacting? Do you, watching this right now, do you think this is an overreaction? Do you think that this wasn't a big deal? I honestly want to know. What do you think? Tell me, folks. I'm typing in a comment right now. Hang on a second. So I just popped up a question here. And when people are watching this video, either live or they're seeing it in the recording with all the links to everything we've been talking about, when you see this, write in the comments, tell us what your answer is. What do you think? Do you think we're over the top? Do you think we've been right? Do you think that that child was correct? Was he a coward or was he a hero? What do you think? Klaus says that he thinks that New York law authorities won't pursue this matter. Actually, they already are. Let me say it again. We've already spoken to the police. There is an investigation already ongoing. It already has been reported. They are pursuing this. Now, what is the result of that? I don't know. But they are already pursuing this. And we will endeavor with the DA and the prosecutors to go to the fullest extent of the law in punishing this individual. And we will implore the judge that tries this case to ensure that they make an example and to prevent this from happening again in the future. Klaus says that he's surprised. You shouldn't be. This is a crime. It is clearly, and it is on record as it is a crime. There is no question there. Or at least, let me say, because he hasn't been tried yet, I believe it is a crime. I believe the video shows evidence of a crime. I believe that this will be an open and shut case. And as such, punishment should be severe, as an example. The question is, someone has to do something. See, if no one had stepped forward and the video existed and people would go, wow, I saw that. Oh my God, he threw the rock, he threw her egg. It's violent. What are we going to do? We have to do something. And what I did is I pressed charges because I think he was trying to assault me. Maybe I'm wrong. Either way, he was trying to assault someone. I could be wrong. I don't think I am. Oh yeah, and I do plan to keep everyone aware of it as this progresses forward, whatever the status may be. I'm sure once we find out the name of that individual, it will be easier. Knowing that we believe he's a student will make it somewhat easier. And I will implore Binghamton University to look into this. What are they teaching their students? If, in fact, he is a Binghamton University student, what are they teaching their students that their students, based on what they're learning, are learning that violence is the only answer to words? I would love to hear Harvey Stenger answer that. I would love to see what his reaction is. He's the president of Binghamton University. I would love to hear what he has to say about that. What would he do? Because we know what he's done in the past. In the past, he's encouraged violence. He's encouraged confrontation. He's supported progressive leaders of tomorrow and the far left. especially when it came to Dr. Art Laffer, who was trying to have a speech at Binghamton University, a prestigious individual coming to Binghamton University to talk about economics. And the president of Binghamton University instead decided that he wanted to promote the violence of Antifa and progressive leaders of tomorrow. And that's exactly what he got, a near riot on his campus. That's why Binghamton University is being investigated at this time. As we reported last year, Binghamton University is under a Department of Education investigation as we speak for the violation of rights of its students and the public. Something, again, not well talked about in the news media, something that the news media has glossed over. But this is an extension of that same teaching. They've been teaching students to be violent. And that's why they're being investigated by the Department of Education. And I hope the Department of Education is paying attention to see this is, I believe, a continuation of that lesson being taught by Binghamton University. That is my belief at this time. Klaus mentions you have a case, but how far will the prosecutors and judges for court hearings? New York City law system does not support Republicans or conservatives. Well, I'm not in New York City. I'm from New York City, but we're not in New York City. We're in Binghamton, southern tier of New York. And yes, they could go against this, but I will pursue it as far as the law will allow, making as much of an example as possible. No guarantees, but then again, there are no guarantees in life. But I stand up for what I believe, and I will say what I believe, and I do that publicly, and I will be happy to publicly speak about this as well, because I am not intimidated by children and cowards with rocks or eggs. I'm not intimidated by mobs of people. As you may recall, I've been surrounded by a mob in 2020 of people screaming that they think I was a racist, that they didn't like what I had to say. What did I say? The police have done a decent job in my community, that they haven't committed acts of police abuse, as documented by video cam footage from their body cams. And I support that, and that they could always improve, but they're doing a good job. And because of that, I got surrounded by a mob of 50 progressive leaders of tomorrow individuals, some of whom have apologized to me since, personally, not publicly, but personally. They've come up and they've apologized for their actions, that they overreacted, that they went too far, that they were wrong. And in hindsight, when they calmed down, they realized what they did. And that's a good thing. Be better if they did it publicly, like they attacked me publicly, but that's okay. At the same time, I stood my ground then. I'll stand my ground now. And I will pursue this as far as I can. And again, I don't advocate violence against a child. As I've told individuals and I'm saying publicly, I don't want him to be harmed personally. That wouldn't be right. That only escalates the situation. But I'm not going to back down either. And none of us should. Not for expressing our voices, not for doing what every American can do and should do, our First Amendment right. And I don't know how many people are seeing this. I know the Jets had a game. I know the Giants have a game. And I know people are watching the Jets game and the Giants game, and they're enjoying themselves. And I would like to as well, but you know what? My community is in danger. And it's not just a community in upstate New York. This is happening across the country. The kids at Binghamton University are being taught the same kind of critical race thoughts as we're seeing in every university across this nation. The same kids, the same teachings at Binghamton University are the same teachings at Arizona State University, where the kids thought that it was okay to chase someone into a bathroom and record them and assault them. Because that's what happened to Senator Kirsten Sinema, who happens to be a Democrat and deserves the right as a woman to be able to go into a bathroom without being chased down by other individuals with cameras, which, by the way, is illegal. And those individuals should be charged with a crime. And the dreamer, the one illegal alien that was there who admitted I think her name was Blanca, she needs to be deported for committing crimes as well as being an illegal alien. And they need to understand that just because they have a feeling doesn't mean that everyone has to bow to their will, and that intimidation tactics like that don't work. Just like we saw at Binghamton University when they attacked Dr. Art Laffer, Plot and Antifa and BLM, they didn't convince anyone that they were right. They just convinced everyone that they were violent. That's it. Now, for some reason, it seems the progressives think that when people are seeing them being violent and they're quiet in the face of their violence, they think, well, then people agree with you. No, no one agrees with you. They just don't want to be engaged in violence. And they will oppose you everywhere they can. They're not winning. God help me, I hope they're not winning. But it needs to be said. It needs to be brought up. It needs to be addressed. And I don't know how many people will agree with me or not, but I'm willing to stand up and be heard. I'm willing to make this public. And I put my face and my words and my name on the line. And I'm willing to do that. See, that's what people who aren't cowards do. They stand up for their convictions, they speak out, and they stand tall. You may not agree with it, but there should be respect for it. And sometimes you won't get the outcome that you want. But that's okay. Klaus mentions, I used to watch NFL for decades, but don't miss it. I'm in my 50s, got better things to do, like what's going on with my country, do what I can to keep freedoms and rights for everyone. I agree with you. And I don't think the NFL is, it's entertainment. That's what it's supposed to be. Entertainers are not politicians. They don't make our lives better. They just give us something to distract us from the issues of the day. I don't miss the NFL. I used to be a fan. 53. Used to be a big fan. Love the Giants. If I don't see the game, I don't care. I do think it's important that we fight against the vaccine mandates as they get more and more different groups involved. I didn't get to mention that. That's the latest thing with this vaccine mandate. Now, the appointed governor touted mandates for healthcare workers and announced that workers at psychiatric hospitals, in the state's Office of Mental Health Network, or any specialty hospitals certified by the Office for People with Disabilities, Developmental Disabilities, will be required to get at least one dose of the pandemic medication by November 1st. Further, the appointed Governor Hochul says, we know the vaccine works. We know the vaccine mandates work. She said during a briefing from the state capitol, we're going to have to be talking about some more going forward. She wants more mandates. She's telling you right there. She's telling you that she's going to create more mandates. She's going to take away more rights. She's going after more and more groups. She's separating. Excuse me. She's separating more and more people in New York State. You're vaccinated or you're not. Two different ways of looking at people. Listen to what she says. We know the vaccine works. No, we don't. We don't know that. It's been around for 9 months. It's had the least amount of time to be tested ever. Now, that doesn't mean it does or doesn't work, but you can't say definitively, scientifically, that that's true because we don't know. We know that vaccine mandates work. She just put them in place on September 27th. Today is October 10th. This article from the Daily News was written on October 5th. There is no way that you know that the vaccine mandates work. There's not enough time to know that. Literally, it's like a week later. You can't tell me you know it works in a week's time. There isn't enough time for the data. And let's look at what's the trade-off here. So you got the vaccine mandates and 30,000 doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers no longer have a job. We see that hospitals have shut down their facilities, that they have limited the number of people that they can help, that they have stopped doing procedures. Is that worth it? Is that worth the trade-off when New York State is at 74% vaccinated, which is the herd immunity that was requested by Dr. Fauci and from the World Health Organization and from the CDC just 6 months ago? This is the number that they wanted us to be at. We're there. We've hit their herd immunity numbers, and now she's telling us vaccine mandates work. How do you know that? You don't know that. That's an opinion. And that's an opinion from the Empress of New York saying, you don't count. You're a peon. You're a peasant. You don't matter. Your freedoms don't matter. She feels like it works. Her truth is it works. So therefore, your life is defined by her feelings. And that should trouble a lot of people. And we're going to have to be talking about some more going forward. She wants to invade your privacy. She wants to invade and micromanage your life even more than she has done so far. And if you disagree, she will punish you. You'll get fired. You will not get unemployment, which is illegal, I believe. And she will punish you, driving you out of this state, whether you want to or not, because you won't be able to live. That doesn't seem like a smart thing to do. But then again, I don't think she's thinking about more than the politics, the optics. That's the only thing she's really seeming to care about. She's not thinking about how is this affecting people? How is this hurting people? How is it denying people health care, the quality and quantity of health care that people are able to have? She's only slightly better than the coward in downtown Binghamton throwing rocks, because she's doing the same thing. Governor Hochul, honestly, is doing the same thing as the coward in Binghamton. He threw rocks. This coward is throwing rocks, and he thinks he's a hero. She's putting out vaccine mandates and thinks she's a hero, not considering the consequences of their actions or the freedoms that they're trying to strip away from people. Appointed Governor Kathy Hochul is just as much of a coward as she is, as the downtown Binghamton kid. And it's kind of sad that our government, that our nation, and our states are facing this. And this is what we are exporting to places like the United Kingdom, like France, Germany, Australia, Canada. It's sad. It's pitiful. No wonder Russia and Iran and North Korea and China think that America's weak. Look at what is happening in our nation. Look at what we are teaching our kids. Look at how what we have taught them is coming to fruition in front of our eyes. Yeah, we're getting weaker. Our economy is failing. We're getting weaker. We're folding and bending over backwards to fund terrorists who want to kill us. And we're punishing people for expressing an opinion about their own bodies and trying to keep their own jobs. That's just, it's terrifying. Dow mentions, in my opinion, by throwing rocks into protesters or protesters throwing rocks at counter-protesters, it becomes a riot that devolves into war. And I agree with you. Which is, again, why I say I don't want this to become Portland. I do not want this to be like Portland, New York. And that means that we have to stop this before it gets there. Because one kid throwing a rock or egg means that there are, the next time, 5 or 50 of them. And then it gets worse. And people react to that. And it gets worse. We have to stop it before it gets there. That's what I strongly believe. You can tell me, Mike, oh, well, I disagree completely. Okay. And as we've said many times, you can call in 607-242-1582. You can call and tell us why you disagree. Or you can leave a comment like Dal, like Klaus, like Jason, like so many others. You can type it in. Or if it's after the program, after the live stream, you've come and you watched it after you were watching football, tell me. Write it in the comments and say, this is what we think. Think you were right. Think you were wrong. I think it's important that we have this conversation in America. I think it's very important. And I think it's dangerous that when we don't. Wow, it's 2.5 hours. It goes by so quick sometimes, folks. And I enjoy and I love being able to speak with you guys. And if you made it 2.5 hours, thank you. And please do subscribe. Please do join us. Help spread the word. Help us to spread this knowledge, because we're not stopping. We're going to continue covering the vaccine mandate protests. We're going to continue to have conversations with political candidates and bring you more information so you can make a more informed vote. We're going to continue to pay attention to what's happening to our country as we see China continuing to take advantage of a very confused old man and an administration that has no teeth. We're going to continue to talk about our southern border. We're going to continue to talk about the Americans that were abandoned in Afghanistan, which is the single worst thing that has ever happened in my lifetime, that American citizens were left abandoned in a foreign nation, in peril, in danger, with global terrorists looking to kill them. Yeah, I'm never going to forget that one. All right, Klaus. And so, folks, we're going to continue, and hopefully you'll help support us. All you have to do is just like, share, more importantly, subscribe. That's all we ask. And we will continue to do the very best that we can, and we will see you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from anywhere in the world. Looking forward to hearing your voices, because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to free speech. We want to hear your voice, like so many have spoken today, and we hope more will speak tomorrow. We thank you, and we look forward to seeing you throughout the week. Bye-bye.